Welcome back to Film Obsessed, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything film related. Welcome back, movie lovers. This is Film Obsessed. So, today, as I kind of teased in last week's episode, we're going to be talking about alternate timelines in movies. Movies that deal with time travel, or some movies that just decide, hey, these previous sequels don't matter. Ignore them. Focus on our new one. No, not that new one. This new one. No, not that reboot. No, this new one that we just now came out with. We're not going to always tell you which ones it's taking canon and ignoring. You're just going to have to figure it out. Now, a great example of this is the X-Men. If you've watched the X-Men films, you already know how confusing those timelines are. You've got the original X-Men, X-Men 2, X-Men 3, The Last Stand. Then you've got X-Men Origins Wolverine, and you've got First Class, Days of Futures Past, which really messes with everything, and so on and so forth. I also love how these movies don't really care about their canon anymore. Take X-Men Apocalypse to X-Men The Dark Phoenix. How Jean had the Phoenix in her, but then somehow had to get the Phoenix again like 10 years later, and these movies are so confusing. Time travel is such a confusing concept. Now, there are some movies that, like Back to the Future, which do it well, or at least in an entertaining way, where you're not trying to think about it too hard. But then you've got the X-Men films. So it was a pretty straightforward timeline, X's 1 through 3. But then you throw in X-Men Origins Wolverine, and it doesn't exactly seem like it lines up all the way when you watch it. It's just kind of like, but that doesn't feel right. Also, why does Professor X look so weird, and how did Scott age up the way he did in that kind of timeline? And because he didn't know Scott. Also, Emma Frost, who later is in First Class, but they're not the same Emma Frost and not connected. And then you've got the Wolverine, and you're like, okay, how long has time passed? But now you're setting off Days of Futures Past, which royally screws up the timeline, and you completely lose track of what you're following. Are you following the new X-Men or the old X-Men? Then you've got Apocalypse, which is following the new old X-Men. And oh god, it gets worse and worse. I had a friend ask me how he needs to watch them, and I was like, well, you can watch 1, 2, 3, and then you can watch Logan, because it takes place however many years down the line. Or you could watch 1, 2, 3 Days of Futures Past, and then move on to the prequels. Or you could just straight up watch the prequels, but then not have any understanding of whatever. Last week we talked about how to watch certain things, but in cases like this, I really don't know. So this last October, I decided to finally watch horror films. I've never really gotten into them. I've never really tried to. Just the way I was grown up, or the way I was raised, I never really watched them, was never really allowed to. Well, I can't really call myself a film buff if it's the one genre I've never given a chance. Turns out I actually really like it, especially these slasher films. The one I decided to watch first was Halloween. I've just heard so many good things about it. I know the name Michael Myers, and I know Jamie Lee Curtis, and I was like, you know what? This seems like a good place to start. I loved it. Halloween, the original, is one of my all-time favorite movies now, especially horror films. I just loved it so much. But then I started to look at where to watch next, and I saw, okay, I can watch the second movie, but the third one's not connected, but then I have to watch the fourth one, and then the fifth one, and then, but there's a reboot, and then the third one is its own thing, often another thing where the first movie is a movie inside of the movie, and then you've got the new 2018 timeline, and I'm like, oh god, what? And then you've got the H2O timeline, and I'm just thinking to myself, oh god, what have I gotten myself into? Ultimately, I decided to watch the 2018 timeline, mostly because that Halloween seemed to have great critical reception, and it's still ongoing. So there was Halloween Kills, which wasn't great, not that good, but hopefully Halloween Ends will be better. So that movie, for example, ignores the plot of everything other than the original film, while H2O pretty much ignores everything after Halloween 2. Halloween 3 and 4 and whatever don't exist. Halloween 3 is off on its own. It's an anthology movie. Long story as to how that happened, but, there are just all these different timelines, and I'm just kind of confused. I literally tried writing it out one day to figure out which way to watch, and I could not decide ultimately. Terminator is another good one. I recently dove back into Terminator. I rewatched the first one and the second one. But then I was like, do I watch 3 and 4? Do I watch Genesis, which takes place after 2? Or do I watch Dark Fate, which is like the newest one? So everywhere I saw, it seems like Dark Fate is one of the better critically accepted ones, but it just did really bad at the box office. It takes place many years down the line and ignores the events of everything after T2. Then you've got Genesis, which kind of goes back to the events of the first film, but it was a terrible movie, so we're not going to talk about it that much, but it's just ultimately convoluted. Then you've got 3 and 4, which just follow the plot the first 2 films set up in a way, but again, utterly convoluted. It is so ridiculous. Another example of this, and it's a lesser one that people don't really pay attention to, is the Transformers movies. You got Transformers 1 through 3. Now, this is kind of a side tangent, but they kind of ignore their own continuity. They kind of forget that they killed a character off or that a certain character survived. They don't really explain how characters got to be there or why they're there. And then it tries to explain it, and then it just doesn't explain it well. And then after the third film, things just kind of go AWOL. We're like, okay, where's Sam? Oh, Mark Wahlberg's here? Cool. Where is everybody that wasn't Optimus or Bumblebee? And then you got like Galvatron, and then he's Megatron again in The Last Night, which sucked. It just kept getting worse. The continuity just ignored itself. And I'm a huge Transformers fan, so it always bothered me that we never got any good movies. Well then, and when I tell you, me and my friend Camden had the longest debate about Bumblebee and if it was a prequel or a reboot or something in between. I am on the camp that it is a reboot, but he's like, "Oh no, well he turned into a Camaro at the end. That means it's connected." I'm like, "Dude, that is the only connective tissue you can find. The Autobots arrived way earlier. It's a totally different set. There's nothing about the movie that connects other than that one thing, and that could happen in any timeline." Now, we live in a day where the word variants, specifically because of Marvel and Loki, you could say this is a variant timeline. Well, again, it's a reboot, as Transformers Rise of the Beast is clearly showing us. Because think about it. The original Transformers movie took place in 2008. That's when we see that all the Autobots minus Bumblebee arrived there. Well, actually, it kind of did show Bumblebee arriving there, but not in the same way. But in the end of Bumblebee, which takes place in the 80s, all the Transformers are already there, which means it can't be the same timeline. Camden, get your facts straight. Well, we're getting a new Transformers movie, Rise of the Beast. Hopefully, this new timeline is a lot more cohesive and actually follows a linear timeline. And Bumblebee was great, so hopefully it will set off a new wave. But it also, again, messes with the timeline. So, pick and choose what you want. It's all over the place. These movies, and there are plenty more I could get into, but I'm not going to, just because I could be here all day if I talked convoluted timelines and movies with sequels that cancel out the events of previous movies. I'll get into another one. Take the current DCEU. You've got, originally it was Man of Steel, followed by Batman v Superman, and then it was going to be Justice League. Well, actually, Wonder Woman came out first, but, that's a different thing. But if you actually watch Wonder Woman, it lines up with the timeline, sort of, but there's at least one thing in there that you're kind of just like, okay, why is this? But now, if you watch Wonder Woman 1984, you'll see that movie breaks all sense of continuity. It's like, oh, she can fly now. Okay, then why couldn't she fly before? And why were none of the events in this movie referenced? It's under the first Wonder Woman movie was addressed in Justice League, but nothing that happened in 1984 did. And you really think that it should. Also, her entire demeanor has completely changed, so you know what? Warner Brothers is a really stupid studio, so it makes sense that they don't really care. But if you actually watch Justice League, there's two timelines. There's the Justice League timeline, and there's the Snyder Cut version timeline. So if you're actually watching nowadays, you're kind of like, okay, well, which one actually happened? Because the Snyder Cut was way better. Everyone like received it better. The original, like the Justice League, as some people refer to it, it just wasn't good. Nobody really liked it. It kind of crapped on the whole franchise and killed any interest. So you're also wondering, okay, where is this in the timeline? But then you've got the show Peacemaker, which follows the events of the Suicide Squad and Justice League. But it's making references to all sorts of characters that we've never seen in the DCEU. And you're just thinking to yourself, okay, they even call out the Justice League specifically, and they're like, when were they ever actually addressed as the League? And again, where was this character? DC is just kind of ignoring the Snyder stuff, honestly, which, I mean, if it works, it works. A lot of their newer stuff has been doing pretty well, at least critically, like the Suicide Squad, but financially it's not doing great. And if you haven't watched Peacemaker, go watch it. I don't know. I'm just getting really tired of all these studios just messing with timelines. Here's the thing. Stop making a bunch of... you know what? Before I get into that, I just realized we're getting another sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't know I think it's on Netflix. I haven't watched it. I just saw it came out at the time of me filming this. And I'm not going to watch it because I've heard it's terrible. But again, it ignores the events of other previous movies. Like, if you're going to do this, do what Scream did. Every Scream movie is in a chronological order. Even though some of them seem like a reboot, they're still a continuation. And that's all that it should be. It follows the continuity. It does what it needs to. And it tells a cohesive story that still plays into the original. You do not need to reboot yourself every 5 minutes. Just stick with a timeline and go with it. If you see that it's not doing well, you do not reboot. Commit to it. But don't do what Halloween did and get into cultism in whatever was happening in that film. Just, no. These convoluted timelines get on my nerves. My friends and I have had many debates about it. Some like the choose your own adventure style of things. Me, I'm like, I just want to watch a franchise and just go in order. I don't want to have to pick and choose, because then you're going to get into arguments with people about what's canon and what isn't. I.e. Terminator. My friends and I had a long debate about if Dark Fate is canon or if T2 or T3 and T4 is. When I decided to rewatch them, it's been a whole thing. So you guys can kind of choose for yourself. First off, do you care that these studios keep rebooting things and continuing franchises but ignoring certain sequels? Do you not want them to keep doing that? Do you wish they would just do something different? Or what do you guys think? Head over to our Instagram at the Oblivious Co. And our TikTok, same thing, at the Oblivious Co. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let us know what you think. And just, give us your thoughts. All right, movie lovers. I'll see you guys later. Have a good day.